This podcast is brought to you by On Track Studio.
This podcast addresses various mental health challenges, including topics such as suicide, addiction, eating disorders, depression, and anxiety. These discussions may be triggering for some individuals. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek support from a mental health professional or a trusted individual in your life. Remember, you are not alone, and help is available. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Mind Your Head. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Todd Jarratt. Todd has previously ran his own business, trained athletes globally, and lectured at universities before almost losing his life at 24 from autoimmune complications. The following years, in and out of hospital, being told that he may not survive, Todd healed himself naturally, going against all medical beliefs. Through this journey, Todd realised that the identity is the centre and the most impactful aspect of the human mind, and founded the Identity System. His mission is to bring global awareness to identity as the most powerful and potent place to create lasting life change. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Mind Your Head, Toddy. I'm so stoked to have you in the studio today.
Let's go.
Now, we met probably, do you reckon a year ago now? I think we had that little catch-up with Travis, and I walked away from that catch-up with you thinking to myself, I've never met someone like you before. And I mean that in such a huge compliment, because you're so genuine and 100% you, and I've never ever met anyone like you before. And I was like, fuck, this guy's onto something.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that I was trouble. I do way too longer hugs.
No. Well, it was nice. I've never experienced something like that before. And I was like, what? Who is this dude?
I don't know.
Yeah. And I feel like there's so much to talk about today with you. And I think we scratched the surface a little bit, and I was so fascinated with your story, your journey, the things that you've experienced, and the things that you've overcome in your life is remarkable. So we got 2 hours.
I'm excited.
You're excited?
I am. Borat might come out a little bit.
That's all right. Whatever comes out, it's fine. So I think just for my listeners, I think it would be best for us to start at your childhood, at the beginning of your journey. What was life like for you growing up?
And then come through till today?
No.
Okay.
I love how I set guidelines for you. No, childhood, please.
Okay, stay there. Finish there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was technically born in Victoria, in Bendigo, but that was because the little town that I grew up in didn't have a maternity ward at the hospital. Like, it was so small. So
remote.
Yeah,
out
right.
Back.
So like 8 hours inland west of Sydney. It's a little town called Hay. It's 2,500 people. There's like
I didn't know you were a country boy.
I am a country boy. That's why I made the joke about the Akubra before.
Yeah.
I don't think I realised I was a country boy until I moved to the coast, and then I'm like, oh, I love the country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love being in the outback and simple in nature. So yeah, I grew up in Hay. It's like the second flattest place on earth.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's crazy. When I grew up racing motocross, we'd go away, and there was, I thought everywhere else was really strange because there was hills. And it wasn't until I got to like my teenage years and I was able to discern, we're the weird ones.
It's all flat.
Really flat where we're from. It's like 300 kilometres in either direction of just as flat as a table.
So you lived on a bit of property out there?
No, we lived on the edge of town. We were earth movers.
Mm-hmm.
So we did all of the irrigation. Like, my parents had an earth moving company. So the big tractors and buckets and excavators, and we did a lot of that for the farmers. So we weren't on a farm, but we did the management and the earthworks for farming. So I had 2 older sisters. They were 5 and 7 years older than me, and it was kind of like being brought up in a way like an only child, because they were having fun and playing as girls, and I'd just kind of get like submitted into having my hair done and stuff like that. It was rough upbringing. Dad wasn't around a lot because he was working so much. It was like mum, my 2 sisters, and I.
Oh, right.
So yeah, I was in year 3 or around there, year 3, I was doing really well in school, and that's when one of the teachers kind of spotted it and sent me away to get tested for I don't know what you'd call it, but basically being gifted, intelligence, like intellect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I don't know how you would work it out, but I went through a bunch of assessments, and they said, yeah, okay, he's highly intellectual, he can skip ahead. So I went from year 3 straight to year 5. And that's, in essence, I tell that story a lot because that's kind of where my challenge started.
In what way?
Well, when I was in year 3, I'd started school with those kids. I'd been through those years with them. And then when I've skipped up into year 5, I'm with a different year group. And so I'm now like the new kid, but it's not like, say, going to a new school where the new kid and you kind of fit in because you actually are new. For me, people knew me, but I was now like this alien that was like, well, he's been with us all along, but now he's up there. And then the year 5 kids were like, you don't belong with us. So when we talk about belonging, alienation, abandonment, that was huge for me when I was about 10. So I went into year 5 and then I was bullied really severely.
So you really struggled making friends and that connect with the other kids, yeah? Yeah,
before that it was fun and I felt like I fit in with my year group. Obviously there was a difference with my intelligence, so there was some differences there, but I still felt like I kind of had my crew. Whereas when I went up into the next year, I tried to fit in and it just didn't work. And those kids in the year above me gave me a really hard time. And so at that point in time, I was excelling in the assessments and the tests and things, and it started to get me noticed of like, oh, I was like standing out in that year group as well, which was, now I look back, I go, fuck, that's really cool. Like I'm switched on, I am a nerd. But it created a lot of tension and a lot of challenge. And so the sporty kids in particular would pick on me, and my teacher at that time was a sports teacher, and she kind of got involved too. And it was to the point I didn't want to go to school anymore. I'd just had like, before we were supposed to go to school in the morning, I'd just lay in my bed and cry to mum, or go to the kitchen and tell her I don't want to go to school anymore. I don't want to be alive anymore. I'm over this. Like, this isn't fair. It's not fun. And we had a lot of meetings with the school, and what we ended up doing was repeating me back the next year to my original year group. Not because I wasn't smart enough, but because I wasn't willing to continue. So that's where there was this kind of choice when I went back into that standard year group. What would I have been, 10, turning 11, that I'm going to get to be back with my friends. But because I'd kind of gone up and I'd been that alien kid, then to come back, it was like we thought it'd fix a problem. But in essence, it kind of worsened it. And it was like, oh, are you dumb? Is there something wrong with you? You went up, now you've come back. And because I was trying to fit in that year above, I was obviously a shithead to the other kids below me. You know how we have like the social hierarchy of like, you'll pick on those kids to try to stay afloat. And so that obviously happened. And they were like, we don't really want a bar of you. And so neither did the other group. So I was like, I just felt like I was alone in a small town. I felt really alone. And they would all play footy, whether it was rugby or Aussie rules. And I was a motocross racer. So again, this more like I'm different. And it got to a point where it was like feeling constantly different, feeling like I didn't fit in no matter what I did. I couldn't have this sense of belonging. It was, I don't know if it was like the instinct of the ego and protection, but this story started to get created of like, well, if you're going to pick on me for being different, it was almost like that defender coming in of like, I'm going to be as different as I can be. So I'm like, I'm choosing it, kind of like I'm walking into the fire. And so it became this story of different equals protection. That's my way of, I'm going to be different, because if they pick on me, it's like, yeah, I brought this on. It's almost like the warrior mentality. And so then that started, and I finished in primary school, then went away to boarding school a couple of hours towards Sydney. And it was either go there or go to a school in Melbourne or Sydney. But if I was to do that, I couldn't continue racing motocross. So, and
that was your sort of passion at that point in time, was it the motocross? Yeah.
Yeah, motocross was my life, and it continued to be. I know we won't go past childhood. It continued to be for quite a few years after. And so I went away to boarding school, and I was there 5 days a week. It was a co-ed school. And I'd continue racing on the weekends. So we'd travel around the country on the weekends. Mum and Dad would pick me up from boarding school, and whether we were racing in Victoria or New South Wales somewhere, we would do that. Boarding school wasn't easy either. The first couple of years, I just kind of played small to fit in. I was chubby, you could say like overweight. I wasn't one of the fit, footy kids, so to speak. And so I just was like, I'm just going to play small and kind of fit in to not go through what I did at primary school.
Stay under the radar a little bit,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work when you're in boarding school, because you're in a boarding house with all boys, and they'll pick on the fat kid. They'll pick on all of that. And so it was challenging. But when it came to summer between year 8 and year 9, I hit puberty. So I was 14, turning 15, so I was a late bloomer. I'd already started commentating sport at this point. Like, I started sports commentary when I was 13.
I think I'm still going through puberty.
Oh, dude.
You commentating sport?
Yeah, I was like if you go to motocross races, I was the guy on the microphone.
Really?
Yeah, in front of hundreds, thousands of people.
How did you get into that?
my local club had a 2-day, it's an open event. So basically people can come in and they it's like an open event from all around the state, New South Wales and Victoria, and some from South Australia. And I'd broken my wrist probably 4 or 5 weeks prior maybe and had surgery on it.
Racing?
Yeah, racing. And my parents were going over to volunteer and help, and they said, look, you love motocross. You love talking. Why don't you try commentating? And I think maybe they saw something in me that I had no idea at the time. Like I was just a kid, wanted to ride my dirt bike and race, and so I gave that a crack. And man, I watched we still have the videos on like DVD.
I was thinking you'd be good at it. Are you good at it?
I was terrible when I was a kid. Like obviously I got better. We won't go to the future yet, but when I was a youngster, like 13, I was woeful. I was like. And here he comes down the straight. Oh,
I was going to say the high-pitched voice.
Yeah, man. But the head from Motorcycling Victoria was there, and her name was Mrs. Mack, and she was very well known in the industry. And she actually came up to me over the weekend and was like, "Hey, we want to support you, and you've got it." I was shit, but I was 13, so I was like, "You could do all right at this if you keep practicing."
You're still young. There's time.
And so she said, "Do you want to come and commentate the?" I think it was the senior Victorian titles, like the senior state titles, a couple of weeks later. I was like, oh, okay. And so that's where that began. And so I was doing sports commentary at the state level for seniors and juniors and regionals around Victoria. And so was start of year 9. That's when I hit puberty, or in the summer of year 8, year 9. And it was like I came back a different human. It was so weird where... it was like the first time girls had noticed me.
Yeah, nice.
And I was like, ooh, hello, this is nice. And it gave me a sense of confidence. It gave me a sense of, ooh, I can actually be me now. As a young guy and you're starting to have girls notice you, like, ooh, this is fucking good. It's like the macho man comes out. And so there was more confidence, and I was able to then start to apply myself in school and my assessments and my marks and really kind of step into that. I still sucked at sport and still ran away from bullies and all of that retreat, which I now have gone through a lot in working through the patterns that came from it. But that essence of boarding school enabled me to become confident enough in myself to then in year 10, I was racing at state titles down in Rosebud in Victoria and had a pretty big crash and lacerated my kidney. So my kidney was in pieces, and basically like the fascia around the kidney was the only thing holding it together. And if that bust, I would have bled out. Another one of those things where I'm like, I'm here for a reason. I'm still here today for a reason. But during that time, I was bedbound for 6 weeks and wasn't allowed to go back to school, because if I got bumped or hit and that busted the fascia,
in trouble,
I'm done. So I still wanted to do well in my school certificate in year 10. And so mum and dad said, look, you can come back to the Hay High School so we can, you're not at the boarding house and everything, and we're with you each day. So we chose to do that. So I went back for a couple of weeks and I actually said, hey, I can do this. And what I meant by that was in Hay, it wasn't cool to be smart. It wasn't supported. You'd be picked on. But I got to a point in myself where I was like, pick on me. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm going to do the absolute very best I can, and I'm proud of that. Whereas a year before that, I probably would have been like, played small again to try to fit in. So
that's a common theme, isn't it? Like I've realised that, especially in schools and high schools, that it's like that tall poppy syndrome. It's like whenever someone's good at something, instead of like lifting them up or encouraging it, it's the first thing we do is to try to tear them down.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
That it's like the making us feel better about ourselves because we kind of level the playing field.
Because I remember so many times where they'd be like, oh, look at that try hard. And I'm like, he's just good.
Yeah, if we knew what we did now as adults, if we were kids,
yeah, mental.
Yeah. So, yeah, year 10 had that injury. Was still doing the sports commentary and everything. And then... I
would love to find these videos, sorry, if we could put them on here.
I've got some DVDs.
Yeah.
And went back to the Hay High School and then chose to stay there rather than going back to boarding school, which was a big decision. But it was either stay at boarding school and give up motocross or stay in Hay and continue racing. And still motocross was my passion. That was my future. And so I went back to Hay and finished year 11 and year 12 with some challenges, that didn't have the same support or the same level of teaching in some of the advanced subjects. So that was a real challenge and struggle. And I was stressed. I was super stressed through year 11 and year 12, like crazy cystic acne and things like that from the amount of stress that I was under, and massive emotional outbreaks with anger. Like I'd be super calm, nice guy. And as we know about like the nice guy, he's nice guy until something pops, and then it's like the volcano, and I'd fucking flip a desk at school and walk out and come back 5 minutes later. I'm like, I'm so fucking sorry. But it was just
a build up.
A build up of pressure, like feeling like I had to succeed because of what I'd been through in primary school, then going to the boarding school and coming back, and I needed to be this particular way. And I look back now and there was a large part of it that was self-imposed, but I feel like that also came from what I'd been through earlier years. So finished up year 11 and year 12, and then was going to go to uni. And what was it? That's right. I commentated the junior Australian titles in year 11. So I'd flown up to the sunny coast actually to Coolum.
First time?
I'd been there in 2007 for junior Australian titles. I raced.
Yeah.
I got smoked.
Did you?
Yeah, absolutely smoked. And then when I was 15, I got flown up to commentate. Oh, that's right. I commentated the women's nationals up here earlier in the year, and they were like, "Hey, you're pretty good at this." By this point, I'd had a few years, so I'd got the skills a bit more honed in. And then I came up and commentated the junior nationals up here for a week at Coolum, and then we went down to Horsham and the same thing. So basically, by this point, I was kind of the guy in junior commentary around the country, and then I got spotted at the junior nationals in Horsham in my final year when I was finishing high school, and the senior nationals, the MX, the big Australian championship guy, saw me, and Kawasaki race team spotted me, and they were like, "Hey, we're launching a junior team and we'd love you to manage it." And so I left high school and went into managing a race team, which was a national race team, and then managing the national motocross series, and into study at uni. So it was like a lot, but at that point in time, that was kind of like the validation that I needed to be like, different is good, like caveman, like different, good. Yeah, keep going. Yeah. Like, so a lot of insecurities I would have had under the surface, but I just had no idea about them because I was so driven and determined.
Well, that was one of my questions. It was like, you seem so stubborn in your pursuit, but in like a good trait to be stubborn in a pursuit for success. Yeah. Like I don't feel like it takes, it would take a lot for you to like go off course. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that pig-headedness. Once I've got something that I'm holding on to, it's like, okay, I'm the last person that'll let go. Which I look back now and what I've been through the last couple of years in terms of the inner journey. And there was a period of time where I really shamed that. And we'll probably get to that part later, but there was huge shame around my sense of like attachment to things and the drive and the level of ego that I had to hold on longer than other people and push harder, and when other people would quit, I'd like stay the course. I actually shamed myself for that. It's only been in the last couple of months that I've gone, that's a fucking superpower when you have awareness with it. Because there's a lot of people are going down that path, but they're doing it from a place of obsession or from fixation that comes from lack underneath. And so that was me. And now it's like, okay, well, I have that work ethic and that capacity. I can tap into it, but I get to do it mindfully and choose when I use it or when I use it.
I love that. And I don't mean to sound arrogant here, but I've always had this feeling or this thought ever since I was a kid that I was meant to do, I guess, big things in my life. Yeah. Like every job that I've had, I've always just sat there going, oh, fuck, I'm meant to be doing something else. Like, and big can mean like different things to different people. Yeah. And even when I was playing footy and like getting paid to do it, I was always thinking like, oh, I feel like I'm meant to be doing something else. Yeah. And, having an impact and whatever that means. And I didn't even know what that meant for me, having an impact or doing big things. And have you always had a feeling that you're going to do great things in your life? Why are you laughing?
I had an experience in year one.
Year one?
In year one. And I shared this with my somatic therapist 6 months ago. I don't know how we got to it, but basically there was a sense of we have like our essence, our being, like our spirit. And then we have like a wounded layer, which is kind of like when we get in trouble as a kid or something painful happens where we get taken out of that and we get hurt. And then what happens as kids, we don't know how to manage that, so we go into a protection layer. We don't go back into our essence, we kind of go into compensations. kind of like, oh, you're being told you're not enough. So what do? You work really hard to make sure you never hear that again.
Coping mechanisms.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
And so we were talking about the being and the essence, and Emanuela said, when was the first time you remember having this sense of just a knowing? And when I closed my eyes and went through the process, it was so clear, and I can still remember it and see it now. I was in year 1 and I had my little blue 2-button public school shirt on, and I was walking from the year 1 classroom, 1Q was our class, up towards where the sports shed and the canteen was. And there was just this, it was like a voice, and I don't know if it was I think it was like an internal feeling, but it felt like it was something outside of me. And it was this, you're here to do great things. That was the message.
That's what you heard?
That's what I heard. Well, that's what I felt. And there was this, I was fucking 7 years old. I didn't know what it meant. But it was so vivid and clear, and I never forgot it, that it was like that feeling remained with me. And it was just like coming back to it over the last 6 months or so, where I've gone, oh, that was the knowing. That was like that voice inside. So in that sense, yeah, and I think that's what's given me a part of that confidence to stay the path when things have been challenging, that connection. Yeah. Have you had like something?
This is going a little bit off topic, but fuck this. I've never just sort of shared this with anyone before, but I've always had an inner voice ask me a question.
Yeah.
It first started when I was in year 8, and I've never talked about it. I've never even talked to a psychologist about it, and I don't know where we're going to go with this, but I've always had an inner voice tell me what's the difference.
Gotcha.
Every night in the shower, this voice would go, what's the difference? And I'm like, what do they mean by that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is the difference? And I'm like, I applied it with rugby, and it was training. I was like, what's the difference? As in like me and someone else, like what am I going to do to be the difference? And I'm like, is that what it is? And it's like this whole life of trying to like figure out or decipher what's the difference. And I've always had that inner question ask me that every day.
Yeah.
For the last 15 years or something.
Yeah.
So that's my sort of experience, and it's weird.
Yeah. It's so interesting that we all have our own experiences, and I know that something that I've been sort of diving down the path of the last little while has been internal family systems. And I know it'll be a short tangent, but in essence, what I've come to understand in terms of psychology is that a lot of the time we think of it as like layers of an onion. And they say like, oh, you peel back more layers and you get to the core and you healed that thing. With family systems, it's like cloves of garlic, and we've got parts of ourselves. And they say we've got a lot of mental chatter going on, it's actually different parts. We have like between 10 to 30 parts that kind of make up our primary identity. These cloves of garlic that are in a confusion or disagreement or agreement about things, and they're kind of chatting. And typically a part is carrying some form of a burden or a challenge from a challenge or a trauma in the past. And so their role is to protect. So a lot of the time we find that when we're most stressed or we're most reactive, it's when there's most chatter. When we're most calm, chilled, whole, relaxed, responsive, there's the least chatter. And this is the difference between us being in this integrated sense of whole self and the parts that are, we're going to protect this and this might come up and all of the noise. And so the self, when we're in that authentic expression, that flow, that being, that essence, there is a guidance in that. It's kind of like the downloads or the messages. So my thing is like, I wonder if that's, if you said it comes in the shower, you said it's in the shower quite frequently, yeah?
Every night.
Yeah. So I wonder if like that's a part of you and yourself would be.
I do a lot of my thinking in the shower, like just hot water running in my face. Yeah. And I'll just like, it's some sort of like, just relaxes me so much that like all the noise stops apart from this one voice that will just go, what's the difference? I'm like, oh, fuck, there it is again. What is the difference? I don't know. I don't fucking know, but it's been doing it for years. And I'm like,
the difference between Promite and Vegemite or Marmite?
Yeah, and it's just like, how do I decipher this? Is this always going to be a thing for me that it's like, what is the difference? And I'm like, is it the difference between like being good and great? Like I apply that with footy, like between a good player and a great player. Is it between like, even with the podcast, is it a great podcast or a good podcast? It's like, what's the difference? And I'm like, oh, this is not driving me crazy or anything, but it's just like a constant thing that I'm like thinking about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, if it if it's something that I'll find the answer to, or is it something that's constantly driving me? You know, like something that's chasing, like I'm chasing to find the answer, but in that chase, it's like helping me improve or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
this is where, to me, it's when we get into the body, is where a lot of my work has shifted, has been from the focus on the mind to realizing that most of what we're seeking, trying to work out up top, the answers are already within because these are those parts and the felt sense. And we know that the body gets triggered before the mind. We have that reaction, then we're thinking. So it'd be cool off air for us to actually jump in and see if you feel into the sensation in the body that's linked with that, what it actually feels like. And from there, you typically get a guidance of the answer.
Oh, I've got a funny feeling that it's about me being scared to fulfill my potential. I think it's me always playing small because that's what I feel is safe and comfortable. And I've did it through everything that I've done. I'd rather just fit in and be safe and comfortable rather than wonder, fuck, if I actually really tried here, imagine what I could do. But then with the high reward equals high risk. Yep. So then I'm like, oh, would I reach for that and probably fail or stay here and be safe? Yeah. I think that's deep down. I've always been so scared to take the risk and possibly have that reward of being something great or don't take the risk and be in my safe zone.
Gotcha. And does that question, when you hear it, does that usually spur motivation or nervousness?
Initially nervousness because I didn't know what it meant. And now it's like motivation. I think, what is the difference? Fuck. It's kind of like, no, you can do more here, Elliott.
Gotcha.
You can do more. Stop playing small.
Yep.
It hasn't got you anywhere.
Yeah.
Without being, too hard on myself, playing small hasn't gotten me anywhere.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I'm like, I know the outcome if I play small.
Yeah.
I know what's going to be the outcome.
Yeah.
But I don't know the outcome if I don't play small.
Yeah.
So how about we go down that path?
The uncertainty.
So when did things really kick off for you?
I would say that next year, the year where I moved from Hay to Bendigo to go to uni. I went to America at the start of that year because I didn't go to schoolies. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I wasn't that guy. Again, I was like fixed on the path. I'm going to achieve the goals. I'm different. Everyone else parties. Well, I don't do that. So I went to America at the start of the year and went and rode over there and did some travel, bit of a holiday, and then went to uni and started at uni full-time in exercise science because my passion was training athletes, and was doing the team management and the sports commentary for the national series and the senior state titles. So there was a lot happening, and I think from memory through that year I also did my PT certification so that I could start training people while studying exercise science to get reps, what do we call it, like reps on the board, so that I wasn't just working a job on the side that didn't actually apply to my study. So I was doing a lot. That was 2014. Then 2015, I stopped the team management so I could race again. So I went into the Pro Open class, which is the kind of like the highest level in our sport. And I was like, I'm going to give it one last crack. Because the year before, I'd given so much to these junior athletes. We got to go to the Junior World Championships in Belgium and a few things like that. It was very fulfilling, and I loved it. And I look back, and they're kind of like, they were the days. When we talk about the days.
Yeah, the fondest memories.
Those because I was helping kids from 11 to 16 chase their dream of becoming a professional. And a few of those guys are. And getting to go to the Junior World Championships and seeing guys that are actually now world champions at the highest level, Red Bull athletes over in the US making millions of dollars, getting to travel with them and watch them and sort of see that journey now has been really cool. Yeah,
that'd be amazing to see, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, when you see them from when they're like 10 years old to where they are now. Yep. And it was that year was, I feel like that confirmed to me, keep on your path. It was almost like validating to my ego. Yeah, then the following year was racing, still doing the commentary, but I actually then went into sports journalism as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Fuck, you've done a lot.
Yeah, I did a lot when I was young. I was just like, how much could I fit on my plate? There was a saying I learned from a mentor back then who was he promoted the National Motocross Series. So he was, in a way, he acted as a business and career mentor without me knowing. And he used to have a saying, it was like, and you would have heard this, bite off more than you can chew and chew like crazy. And that was it for me. I was like, I don't care if I don't sleep. I don't care if I don't have friends. I'm just going to keep going. And so the sports journalism was really cool because I'd done well in school and they found that out and they kind of pair commentary with that. And I could ride pretty well. So that actually then led into me doing bike testing. So let's say Yamaha or Honda or Kawasaki or Suzuki bring out their latest model of bike. Before the public get access to it, the journalists get to go and test it. So they'd fly us in.
I didn't know that.
It's
cool.
It's really cool. Yeah. So you get treated like a rock star.
Yeah.
Because I never made as a pro racer. So that was like
this
my
is
way.
The next best thing, isn't it?
So you go and you ride the new bikes and you get to do the reviews on them. Hey, we like this. This could be improved. This is great. X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You start to see the politics of things when you're on the inside of that. And it's like, hey, we're putting you up. We're giving you all these nice things. Make sure you write a nice review.
Yeah. They're trying to butter you up a little bit. Yeah.
And that's typically the case for most people. But again, I'm the different motherfucker. And I was like, no, your bike was shit and they're going to know about it because I don't want them to ride that thing. And, But that then became an issue with the people I was working with because they're like, hey, we can't be doing that because of the manufacturer relationships. And that's where for me I started to mature in a sense of I'll speak my fucking truth. Not in a way of like this spirit truth, but just I'm not going to fucking lie because this is people's money. This is what they're doing. And then that's where it was awesome to be able to do that because we'd go to the reviews and the tests and everyone else would do 10 laps and they'd be done. I'd ride the bike for like 3 hours in the day. I was like laps on laps on laps.
I'm making the most of this.
Yeah, I was enjoying it and I wanted to know the bike. So people would look at me and they're like, when are you going to finish? I'm like, when I know what I need to know. So again, it was like that work ethic. And within the moto industry, I was like young, but people had started to know, when you're a name in the industry and people would know me as the hard worker. And that was really cool. Last year of uni, I started to take the strength and conditioning more seriously. So I was interning down in Melbourne at that point at Woodford Sports Science Consulting, learning high performance with athletes. And it was just like things started to be too much pressure and stress wise. And I started to get a bit sick. I think it was maybe like February, March in the year. And I ended up in hospital March, just before, like a week and a half before the first round of our national series in motocross. And we didn't know what it was. All I knew was that for weeks to a month before, I'd been starting to pass mucus in my stool. And I was just like, I thought I had worms. I was like, oh, this is weird. And just kept going. And it just started to get to a point where I couldn't train in the morning because I couldn't brace. I couldn't squeeze and create pressure for a squat or a deadlift because I felt like, in essence, I was going to shit myself. So it was the gut issues. And they kind of started building to the point that I started to see blood. And one of the trainers had asked me where I was working at the Human Mechanics, why aren't you training in the morning? And I just was like, because I hadn't told anyone. It's like, I just don't feel great. She's like, what do you mean? And then I opened up to her and she had Crohn's disease. And she's like, hey, you need to get that checked. I was like, he'll be right. And it got to a point where a couple of weeks later, I was in the fetal position at home, like writhing in pain. It's like, okay, I need to go to the hospital. And I was there for a couple of weeks in hospital and basically they just said, look, you've got an acute bout of colitis. Here's the steroids. Here's the
antibiotics and whatever it is.
I can't remember the other term. It was immunosuppressants to suppress the immune system and off you go. So I took those for the 2 months I was told to, took out some nightshade vegetables that they'd recommended and went on eating my shitty diet and stressing myself out and didn't change anything else because they hadn't told me any different. I didn't even know what colitis was because they'd made such a no thing about it. You don't need to go and look anything up or change anything. So I continued on through that year, just thought it was a thing, done, gone. And that was my last year at uni. Still doing the commentary and everything. And then I was supposed to do my master's in exercise physiology, but that to me was more rehab-based, people with challenges and in disease and conditions in the older population. I was passionate about working with athletes. And Woody, my mentor in the sports science field, said, look, if you want to be a great coach, you need to go to America and you need to get into the college system. And so what I did was over a few days, I collected like every Div 1 and Div 2 college name and then all of their strength and conditioning staff, got all their emails and just collated it into a big document. And I was like, I'm just going to shotgun email everyone this highlight reel of me coaching with my bio and a bit of information. Like, I want to come over and intern. And I did that to about 7 colleges. Like, I just sent it out and then I was like, something's not right. And I didn't know what it was at the time. but I actually got accepted into a couple of them, and one was Purdue University, which is a
big college.
Big college.
Yeah.
And now I look back, I was like, whoa. Yeah. But it was through that time where there was this part of me that was like, if you were teaching one of your athletes how to get on the team they want to get on, would you say shotgun all of them, or would you say be like a sniper and just like nail in on your plan A, your one? It's like, ooh. So it was like taking my own advice. So I want to go to Stanford because they have some of the best athletes in the world, but their education is really high, like matches it. Harvard, Oxford, great educational. Sport not so great. Yeah. Colleges like Alabama and Penn State, huge in athletics, but not so great on the academics. So this is that middle ground. And
massive college, like.
Yeah. And so in essence, over a month of time, Matt Buson was a coach that I found through LinkedIn that had been to Stanford and was based in Australia. He was up here on the sunny coast. And I was calling him, messaging him, LinkedIning him, Facebooking him every day for a month.
It's been a pest.
I was literally like, what do I need to do? How do I get over there? Like just every single day. And this is just how I was. It was like, I'll fucking force my way through this door. Yeah. And on the 28th day, I still remember it because the day before my mum was talking to me in the kitchen in Hay when we were about to go on our family holiday. And she's like, you should stop pestering this guy. He hasn't responded in 27 days for a reason. And I was like, you don't get it, Mum. And the next day when I called him, he picked up. And the first words he said to me were, you don't fucking quit, do you? And I was like, no. I know what I want. And this was the 29th of December. So like I'd been calling him across Christmas and Boxing Day and everything. And we were supposed to go on a family holiday on the 1st of January in Mildura. And he said, look, if you want to come up, you can come and have a week or 2 weeks up here. If you're good, I'll write the letter of recommendation, put it over to Stanford, and
you're good to go. Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, like this could be real. And I packed my bags that night and I got on the road and drove straight up. Yeah. Missed the family holiday, but that's what I meant. Like I've done some talk on social media about how I used to be. Yeah. And now I wouldn't do that anymore.
You wouldn't?
No, because after what happened with my health through those couple of years, I know that we'd get to, I wouldn't compromise the things that I value most, which is love and connection. And I was on my deathbed and in those later years, and I knew that I'd fucked up because I was empty and I had achieved and created success, but it was all for this external vein and the ego and not actually feeling fulfilled in my life. And so like a lot of this is a cool story, but there's parts of it I go, there's the mindfulness that needs to be applied to the mindset and the drivenness.
So there's got to be that balance of being driven, but also
aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I was to then shortcut through, came up here, Boos and Eldine and the guys that were linked in with the uni and coaching, they were like, wow, you're really good at what you do. Do you want to come and lecture at the uni with us and tutor and teach in the PT courses and train athletes up here? And at that point in time, I was basically running the academy that I was coaching down in Victoria, and I wasn't really getting to learn. I was the teacher. I'm like, I'm 20. My number one strength is my love of learning. And so I moved up here 2 weeks later. So I did the 2 weeks, went down and transferred someone else into my role for 2 weeks, and then came up, and I've been here since. I stepped into the gym that I was at, which was a performance academy up here, was teaching at the uni and training athletes, and started an allied health mentorship, which was a TJT mentorship. And at the start of 2017, I came up here. Start of 2018, I went to the US and got to go and guest coach at Stanford.
What an experience, eh? Holy shit.
Yeah, dude. And like Katie Ledecky was there. She's like the second most successful Olympian of all time to Michael Phelps. Getting to see her in the swim program, getting to work with guys like Christian McCaffrey, who's in the NFL.
The NFL running back for 49ers. Is it a different level over there?
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole different... Well, there's just a depth. Like, we might have 10 people in Australia that are elite.
Yeah.
That can beat the Americans. But Americans have 1,000 of pretty close. You know, so being over there, just the level of financial investment in their facilities, the amount of gyms that they had on campus at Stanford, the level of equipment that they had was just unbeknownst to me. Like, it was a whole different world.
Yeah.
Just the amount of money in the facilities and the testing and the science that they had around it was incredible. And I got to, when I was there, Carol Dweck, the book Mindset.
Yep.
She talks about fixed and growth mindset. She was a lecturer there. And Robert Sapolsky, who's the author of multiple books, but one is Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, which was now I look back, I go, wow, fuck, I wish I'd talked to him more because of what I went through with my health in the later years. But I got to go and sit in on some of their lectures and listen to them in there, because at this point in time, I was training athletes physically, but I had athletes that were the fittest and strongest in motocross, and they weren't winning. I was like, something's off.
Yeah.
And so I'd started to, I'd been a very mindset person all my life, but then started to transition to bringing mindset in with my athletes. And by this point in time, I knew physical wasn't the answer. So although I was at Stanford, I was interviewing their head coaches and the runners, the leaders of the programs, not about what they're doing in training, but I was like, what sets you apart in performance? Or what sets Alabama apart in terms of how they win? So it was more about what are the 1%ers?
It's so true, because at the highest level, everyone physically are absolute machines.
Yeah.
So you got to find the point of difference, and the point of difference, you're right, is that mental game.
Yeah, it was the sense of, at that point, it was their sense of belief in the program they're a part of. If you go to Alabama, you're there to win. Stanford was not the Stanford Stadium was known as the library because it was so quiet, compared to over East. Just these massive discrepancies, and that would show. So it was interviewing about that, and then when I went to a few other facilities, Mike Boyles and Eric Cressy's and Les Spellman's down in San Diego, all world-class coaches, it was similar. They've created professional athletes, but I'm asking them more about what's the difference between this guy in the NFL and this guy in the NBA, and why are they the 1% and why are these guys not? So it had already transitioned into the passion of mindset, and I started bringing that into TJT and the mentorship, just with simple things like ice baths and gratitude and affirmations back in the day, and looking at limiting beliefs and stuff like that. I was in the exercise science and strength and conditioning space, but the passion was the mind. And I know now that what happened in the couple of years to come, 2018, I was pretty standard. That was the year I went to America, then was running the mentorship. Then through 2019, I started to get sick again. And that's...
Yeah, let's go into that.
Let's go there.
Yeah.
So now, like I said, looking back, it was a sign from my body that I wasn't living my purpose. I was off my path. Because I was so passionate about the mind, yet I was still teaching at the uni about prescription and programming and training and lecturing and running my mentorship in the physical, where my whole, my mission and my journey was more to what I'm doing now, but I wasn't willing to do the thing because I was I'm so successful in this space at such a young age, the ego, being attached to that sense of validation. And I started to have similar symptoms, originally, getting the bloating and then having the inconsistent stomach things and then the mucus and then more blood. And from, I would say end of 2018, actually, I was starting to have that. And it got to the start of 2019 and I needed to see a specialist because things weren't going too well. I was passing blood multiple times a day and just wasn't doing anything about it, and saw a specialist, and they basically just wanted to put me on a whole bunch of medication. I was like, it just doesn't feel right. So I said no to them. By this point, I'd read Dispenza's work and Bruce Lipton's work around epigenetics and how we can heal ourselves, and knowing the physiology of the body to the point I had through my study and the teaching at uni and in human physiology. I was like, there's things here that I'm not sold on the medication. And so a couple more months went by and I was still passing blood and I still wasn't great. I was functioning, but I was nowhere near 100%. I was in pain, I was in discomfort, and I was kind of pushing through. People didn't know on the outside, but I was in a pretty rough time. It continued on, and then I got to work with a specialist who was one of the top in the world in fecal microbial transplant, which it's called FMT, and it's all the gut microbiome.
Oh, yeah.
So basically what they'll do is people with gut health issues, they'll take the gut microbiome, so the feces, the shit, of someone else, and they'll implant it into your own stomach, and it will repopulate and heal.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, so it's wild. People that have been obese are given the microbiome of someone that are thin, healthy, they lose all the weight. People with epilepsy, people with autism are given the microbiome of someone that is without epilepsy, without autism, completely cured. Like,
What?
mind-blowing shit. They said that FMT is probably the biggest, what was the word? Discovery since antibiotics. And obviously antibiotics have their strengths and their weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
FMT, when it was first discovered, they just went gung-ho with it. And then they were like, oh shit, we've got to be careful because we're actually like people that have this issue are now giving it to them. So it's kind of like putting in another organ in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can take on those impacts. So I got to connect with a professor, Johan van den Bogard, and he had just finished publishing research in The Lancet, which is one of the highest renowned scientific journals in the world in health. And he'd just done a research on FMT. And I went to him and said, hey, I don't want to take medication, I want to do FMT. And he said, look, we've just finished our research on Project, sorry, we don't have the funding. And it's like, shit. And my mum and dad knew how severe I'd been. And they said, look, we'll fucking fund it. Like, if we need to get the fridge, if we need to get the things, like, what do we need to do? Because it was kind of like they questioned the medication as well, I think, from my views. And we couldn't get it worked out in time. And so basically I got put on medication. I had allergic reactions. It was all challenging. And then in July, I ended up in hospital emergency, had to go in kind of in an emergency state because they needed to put me on a whole bunch of hydrocortisone. So in essence, with an autoimmune condition, that's what ulcerative colitis is. And I don't identify with that label anymore. Have better gut health than pretty much anyone I know. My health, my fitness, my strength, I'm the fittest and strongest I've ever been. I don't have symptoms. I can eat gluten and dairy and shit and I feel fine. I've done the work to recreate my health. But in terms of that label and autoimmune conditions, in essence, it's an accumulated stress in the body where the body can't handle it anymore, so it starts to like leak things out. So ulcerative colitis, it starts to break down the gut of the large intestine. Crohn's, it's the small intestine. People with rheumatoid arthritis, the inflammation happens at the joints. People with eczema or psoriasis, it expresses through the skin. It's all just an excess stress that causes wherever they've kind of got their chink in the chain in their immune system for it to seep through. And this is one of the most incredible things that I learned. And having healed myself from the inside out, I absolutely believe it with my whole heart and my whole knowing that that's the case. And I'll say almost everything that people experience is curable and healable through going through to the root cause of what it is, not just the medication and prescriptions.
That's mental, isn't it?
Well, it's physical, but
yeah. It's crazy.
So
how bad did it get for you?
To the point where I went through a couple more months on all the medication in 2019. And then in September 2019, I'd actually stopped everything. I'd stopped teaching at the uni, stopped training athletes, stopped my business. I was literally just bedbound. I came back up to the sunny coast after I'd been down to visit my family, and I couldn't. I called Johan and was like, hey, I can't turn over. Like, I can't grab my bag from the back of the car because it's too painful. And he said, hey, you need to go get checked into the hospital. And it was to the point I couldn't walk. I couldn't move at that point in time.
Did you lose a lot of weight? Like, what was your appetite? Like,
Yeah, so that in 2019, I went into hospital that was the second time for the emergency, and the surgeon came in, and this is where my journey shifts. This is the tipping point of my life's journey so far. And when I was in there, I'd been in there, I think, maybe 24 hours in hospital. And at this point, I hadn't been able to eat. I was shitting blood like 5 to 10 times a day.
Fuck.
I hadn't had a solid stool in, I'd say, 8 to 12 months. It just falls out kind of thing. And I didn't have control over my bowel really. So I would be really nervous, really anxious wherever I was going. And I was in hospital then, and the surgeons walked in, and I won't say their name, but he was no bedside manner and just said, hey, like, if your intestine is so raw right now, it's called stage 3 pancreatitis, which is as bad as it comes when it comes to the immune system attacking the large intestine. And he said, if that perforates, your bowel perforates and you get sepsis, you've got 24 to 48 hours to live. Now, people that can go and research sepsis, they understand it. It's when we have that matter go into our bloodstream. And so it's an infection. And I think when you're in hospital and you're in that state, there's a fucking lot of fear. And when a surgeon walks in and looks you in the eye and says, look, if things don't go well, you've got 24 to 48 hours to live, I was
You're in deep shit.
I was fucking scared. And my mum was on speaker. My family friend was with me because all my family are down south. And she was fucking traumatized. She was screaming. Like, she didn't know what to do. She got on the plane that afternoon, flew up. My dad and my sister flew up the next morning, one of my two sisters. So in that time, they hit me with more medication. I was on a whole host of drugs that were at the level of, some of them were like leukemia level medication. I was not in a good way. I was still better than what I got to be later, but I was in so much fear that I couldn't trust that inner knowing. You know that voice we spoke about? It was like I was so deep in fear of, like, they've always told me that the only thing that can save me is the medication, the diet, the stress, the meditation, the nutraceuticals, all of that stuff won't impact me. Only the medication can help me. So I was like, okay, fuck, if I'm going to die, like, you'll save me, I'll do what I got to do. I'll take the medication. But when they told me I had that 24 to 48 hours, that's when my life, if you want to say, flashed before my eyes, and there was just deep reflection. And that's when I said before about how I look back and I go, I fucked up. Because I look back and I was an empty mess. Like, I was just laying in the hospital bed crying because I was like, I didn't put my family first. I didn't prioritize friends. I had all these achievements, and what did they fucking matter when I was contemplating whether I live or die? They didn't.
It wasn't worth it.
No, what really meant something to me and what mattered to me was, how did I make people feel? Like, if I'm gone from this earth, have I positively impacted the other person that I've come into contact today? Have I left a positive mark on this person to know that they'll live a happier life? Because that's why I know now that I got to go through what I went through, because I have that awareness now at 24 when most people get it at 80 when they're about to go. I'm like, I have a whole life ahead of me to live in this way that is a gift. And I'm happy to live that way now and stand in that aspect of my truth and be like, cool, you work 14 hours a day? Fuck yeah, I'm not going to do that. And I have this with some of my friends where we're not aligned in the commitment to work. I'm like, I'll work because it's my mission, but I'm going to prioritize my happiness and my friendships because I've been there and I know that experience. So the next few months, September, October through February to March.
So you took the medication.
I was on the medication.
Yeah, and you got better?
I was able to exercise a couple of times a week, like go for a jog, but I was still shitting blood like 10 times a day.
Fuck.
Yeah, I wasn't near 100%. And was in constant pain, skin breakouts, all of that kind of thing, which was just signs that my body still wasn't good. And it got to late March, mid-March 2020, so just before COVID came. And I had I must have gone into the hospital for a checkup, and they called me later that week, and it was the same surgeon that had given me the news before, and basically he said, like, look, we regret to inform you, but you're what we call a non-responder, which means you're not responsive to the medication. So the medication can't save you. And I can remember sitting in my van, and I was livid. I was angry, and I fucking let him know. I was like, all you've told me is that the medication can save me. You've pretty much wiped away any hope of anything else. And now you're telling me the one thing that could save my life or save my intestine so that I'm not having a bag is a medication, and it doesn't fucking work. Like, what am I supposed to do now? And obviously from his side of, like, he's just doing his job. He's only doing what he knows. And that's the thing. Like, whatever specialist you are in the medical field, all you study is what you're taught. So a gastroenterologist only knows about the gut and the medication to support the gut. They don't look at the liver and the kidneys. They don't look at the other aspects of the body. Just like the neurologist only looks at the nervous system. They're not going to look at the other aspects that are impacting it. So we think of the pizza. Between all the slices, though, there are gaps. And they're the gaps where we get missed in the system. That's where people have all of these issues where they can't get it brought together and healed, because it doesn't take a one fucking pronged approach. It takes multiple prongs to work it out. And so that night I was supposed to be running a group call. I was running an academy, an online academy for people to learn about gut health and for people to learn about mindfulness, because that's the journey I'd been on those few months prior. I'd started sitting those Vipassanas, the 10-day silent meditation retreats. I'd had a few of those in succession and had started going deeper down the mindfulness path and was like, whoa, there's a lot here. And I'd had so to speak, started to become spiritually open. And I was supposed to run the call that night, and I remember I was midway through the call, and I'd already been emotional because of the call with the surgeon only an hour prior. I was midway through the call, and I was like, I can't control my stomach right now. And I ran down to the toilet, and I literally plastered not only the toilet but the floor around it just in blood, and it was scary. I was like, this is not good. And I think now that I look back, I'm able to know that was the level of stress and fear my body was in, that it was like, this is it as an expression.
Yeah, got to let it out, yeah.
And so it was a couple of days of what do I do? Of complete confusion, of dissonance, of I've been told that this is the only thing that can save me. Now I'm told that it won't work. What do I do? And it was on the 28th of March in 2020. I was sitting on the balcony at home where we lived in Alex Heads, and I remember calling Mum, and I was like, I'm not going to take the medication anymore. I won't do it. There's just this feeling that if I'm supposed to live through this, I will. I don't know how I will, but there was just that sense had come back of if I'm here for a purpose, which I believe I am, I'll make it through this. And the next 2 weeks when I stopped the medication were fucked. Actually terrible. My liver and my kidney started to shut down. My body was turning yellow. I hadn't eaten in a couple of weeks. I could drink a little bit of water, but it felt like every time I consumed something, it was like someone had cut up my arm and they're rubbing dirt on it. It stung, it hurt. So I was bedbound, and I was losing weight hand over fist, week on week. Over that couple of months from mid-February to May, I was down to 52 kilos, so I'd lost 30 kilos.
Holy shit.
It was the lightest I'd been since year 3, year 4 in school. But I was around 2 weeks after I made the decision to stop the medication. It got to a point where I was in pain all day, every day. I couldn't move, I couldn't get up, I couldn't feed myself, I couldn't brush my teeth. My dad had come up to Queensland to look after me, to care for me. And
were you in hospital or at home?
I wouldn't go to the hospital.
Oh, you wouldn't go?
I wouldn't go.
Yeah. So you're dealing with all this at your home?
At my house. Yeah. So my housemate had been kind of caring for me, but she had work. So that's when Dad was coming up, and that was a decision Mum and Dad made. And I remember there was a night, and there'd been a few nights where I'd been laying in bed and I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day. That was the essence of it. Because of how shut down my body was. I didn't have emotion. I didn't have capacity. Like I said, I couldn't really move. And so there were nights where I'd be writing a letter in bed, not on my pen and paper, but in my phone notes of a letter to...
Goodbye letter?
Yeah. To my mum and my dad, my sisters, my brother-in-laws, to be hey, this is... I love you, and this is what I love about you. Please don't ever change this. Kind of that realization I'd had, if that's what brings me happiness from them, I want them to keep sharing that. So there was a real point of, and that was a few nights in a row where I was I don't know if I will wake up. And that was scary. And I've been processing that, because there's trauma in that of the contemplation of it. And there was one particular night where I wasn't Christian. I was brought up Christian, but through the Vipassanas, I'd sort of been leaning more towards the Buddhist way. Mm-hmm. But there was just this part of me that was God, if I'm supposed to make it through this, I need a sign. I'd told my family I won't go back to hospital, which now I look back was because I was so fucking scared of going back there because of what had happened last time. And I just said, no, I'll die in my bed or I'll live through. And so I prayed and was I need a sign. And the next day, Mitch Vickridge, who's now, I accredit him to saving my life, he reached out. He said, hey, I think we should talk. Because he'd seen that I'd been unwell when I was in hospital in September. And we jumped on a call, I think that day or the next day, and he's like, okay, a Zoom. We need to, he actually said we needed to start yesterday. And so that's where the real inner journey began. And he'd been through it as well, but he lost his intestine. So he'd been a bodybuilder. He'd been an Arnold's Junior Classic bodybuilding champion, and then he lost his intestine. He'd been really unwell. Yeah. And then because of his pain, he was like, I don't want other people to go through this, so I want to help people take control of their health. And when I first went to him, I said, look, I've been on the FMT list, And this is kind of where I started to learn about the true power of our body's healing, because I got to a point where I could trust it, but Mitch taught me the why. And he said, look, with your gut, I don't know, we were speaking about the gut before, and this is why I'd share it, is that with the gut, we do this FMT and we give you a new, like the microbiome, but he said in 12 months' time, you'll likely be back to where you were, which they're finding more and more is happening. Like you'll revert back. And he said, if that's the case, do you feel like that's the root cause of the problem? And I said, well, logically, no, it can't be, because something is causing that reversion. And he said, okay. I said, well, I don't know what it is. Stop fucking playing with me. Like, we don't have time for this shit right now.
Tell me the fucking answer.
Yeah. But he was like really nailing it in for me to go, there's something that even the whole gastroenterology
look deeper
is missing. And he said, in an essence form, in a simplified form, he explained that if you're under a constant load of stress, your kidneys, thus your adrenal glands, are constantly expressing cortisol and adrenaline, like the adrenaline, and you're in cortisol with stress. And when that's happening, it's like they don't get to rest. It's kind of like you leave your car on idle overnight, your petrol's lower. If you keep doing that long enough and the body doesn't get to rest and recover, you will run out of fuel. So then you start to have these adrenal issues. When that's the case, you're not getting blood to the primary organs to rest, recover in that parasympathetic state. And when that's the case, then you start to have liver dysfunction. So when that's the case, then you have issues with your bile, which helps break down. The same thing with your digestive enzymes. So then you have food that would typically be digested that's not, because one, you're not getting blood flow to the area that digests, and two, you're not having the function of the liver and doing what it should be doing in breaking down the food. It's
like a row of dominoes. It's like that knockdown effect, isn't it?
He explained how you can work with the gut, but if you don't address the liver and the kidneys and the liver and anything else that's linked in specifically to that person, you will keep coming back and reverting in the same way. So he said, we're not going to work on your gut. We're going to do everything we can to take pressure off your gut from needing to do any work so it can basically heal like a wound. And it's like easy way for people to think about it. If you've got like stitches in your elbow and you're bending your elbow all day, every day, it's not going to fucking heal because it keeps opening the wound. So he said, if you keep eating these fibrous foods that are challenging for it to break down, or these dense foods, or even like solid foods, that's constantly working it. So we're going to focus on your liver and your kidneys, getting them back to function. We're going to take all the stress off your gut we possibly can. And when we get to a point where we feel like that's starting to heal, then we can start to reintroduce things. So all we did for the first, let's say April, May, June, let's say June, first 2.5, 3 months, I was on cold pressed juice. That was the primary thing because it was cooling, it was soothing on a hot intestine. That's like ulcerations, it's heat stored. And for me, it was from anger. And I'd have a little bit of, just for protein and minerals, I'd have beef liver because of its nutrient density, and egg yolks.
So it was a diet change to begin with?
As well as nutraceuticals, so liver, kidney, adrenal tinctures.
Oh, right.
Yeah, herbal tonics.
Yeah.
Stacey Fote from Balanced Babes on the Sunny Coast, she was actually a huge part of me getting access to these, so thank you to Stace.
We'll shout out for that. Yeah,
absolutely. And those, as well as a whole bunch of other dietary supplements that would give me what my body needed that it couldn't absorb through actual hardened food, like through smoothies, through shakes. So those, as well as I got onto medicinal cannabis so the body could relax and calm. And it was primarily sleep and breath work. And this is where the breath work journey began because I hadn't been out of pain in months, really, like, and in intense pain for weeks. When I was laid up in bed, and I had my first breathwork journey with Mitch, which was like a 30, maybe 45-minute whole like conscious connected oral breathwork, very gentle because I couldn't really even expand my stomach because of the pain, really gentle. But through that process, I got to the other end of it, and I came out and I was like, there was zero pain in my body, to the point I got up out of my bed, walked into the kitchen, started jumping up and down on the spot in front of my dad and my housemate, and they were like, what the fuck are you doing? Get back in bed. I was like, no, I'm healed. I literally was like, I'm healed. And so from that experience, I messaged Mitch. I was like, send me everything you know. Like all the podcasts, all the books, where to go, what to do, how to do it. Tell me everything you can about breathwork. I want to, as me, go down the rabbit hole. And for the next, I'd say 8 months, I was doing like 90-minute deep breathwork journeys 3 times a week, every week. So that's a lot of breath if you speak to a practitioner,
Yeah.
They usually say, 90 minutes, like a fortnight to a month.
Mm.
I was doing it like 3 times a week, but that's because I didn't have a lot of capacity to do anything else, but every time I'd breathe, more emotions would come up and out and more healing would happen. And I had all of these kinds of things. I'd be going through breath and I'd have this like release and this experience. And then I'm like, that thing that I can feel, it's gone. Or this tension that was here, or this swelling that was here, it's gone. Or this thing shifted. And it was every single time I was doing breath work, I was having these healing experiences. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, like Reiki, like people working energetically. I was just breathing and doing Reiki on myself. I had no fucking idea because I didn't know about those things at that point in time. It was just happening.
Yeah.
And I talked to Mitch, and I'm like, man, my hands were doing these weird things over this part of my gut. And he's like, just trust it. Let it keep going. So breath work, emotional release, because a lot of mine was based heat, and the large intestine is anger. That's where anger is stored. That, and I'm pretty sure like the spleen. I'll be pushing my memory. But for me, it was the large intestine, the anger. So a lot of my breath work for the first 6 months was releasing suppressed anger. Which, remember when I spoke about in high school, when I had cystic acne? Acne is heat expressed through the skin.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So let's go into the breath work, because I've had my own experiences with, say, the topic of breath work, because I suffered a fair few concussions playing footy, right? To the point where I got a really, really bad one in 2013 where I got post-concussion syndrome, which is all the symptoms of a concussion without actually having the concussion. I had it for about 3 months, and it was like vertigo, it was dizziness, nausea, it was bright lights, it was noise sensitivity, and it wouldn't go away for 3 months. And I was 21, getting paid to play footy, and the doctor was like, I don't think you should keep playing footy. 21. I was like, no, what are you talking about? Kept playing footy. Kept getting head knocks. Not as bad as that one originally, but any sort of head knock, it would really rattle me. And last year I went down to the Macquarie University in Sydney to do go to a concussion specialist, go to the clinic there, because I had fears of early stages of CTE. Just my mood swings, forgetfulness, my patience. I was getting irritated at little things, and I was getting really worried. And for the first time, I was aware of it. Where I would ask mum and dad, I would ask my friends. They were like, "Yeah, you've been like this for a while," and I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Why are you asking?" I was like, "Because I'm just noticing it now." And they're like, "Oh yeah, you've been like this for ages." And I asked mum and dad, I go, "When did it start?" And he goes, "Oh, probably when you started playing against men, like getting those early head knocks when you were 18 and 19." And I was like, "Oh fuck." And I went to the specialist, and we did all these cognitive tests around your brain and doing all these sorts of things and the memory and stuff like that. And she said, "Look, we did a brain scan. There were like nothing alarming on the brain scan at all." And she said it was really interesting what she said, because she gave me all these lists of medications that could help with my mood, some sort of antidepressants, stuff for migraines and headaches and that sort of thing. And she said to me, "Look, I can give you all the medication to stop these symptoms, but I want you to know the very best thing, and the thing that I recommend to all my patients, is breath work." And I was like, what a strange thing for a medical professional to like go away from the medication and to recommend, I recommend you doing breath work. And I was like, to Jordan, I was like, because Jordan was in the sort of the hospital scene, and she was like, can't believe she said that. Like, amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. But she was like, I didn't think the doctors would be into that.
Did you know what breath work was at that point in time?
No idea.
Gotcha.
No idea. I was
What year was this?
This was probably 2 or 3 years ago. So I've heard of breath work, but I was just like, what, breath work can cure my brain? Yeah. And she was like, I recommend this to all patients is to do meditation and breath work. Yeah. And I was like, that's a strange little, because from a rugby player, that's such a woo thing. Yeah. Give me medication. Just give me the Panadol. I'll take the Panadol. But then for them to recommend like meditation and breath work, I was just like, holy shit. Yeah. It's finally, looking back on it now, I'm like, it's finally coming into the medical world as a remedy. Yep. Oh, not a remedy, as a cure. Yeah. Isn't that right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's remarkable what it can do for us. But the fact that, you're starting, as you've said, it's starting to be shared in the medical community.
So what does it do
Oh, man. Well, depends on the type of breath work.
Okay.
So the way that whenever I speak to people about breath work, I explain this specifically. And that is, there are many methods of breath work. All the different, you go Wim Hof, holotropic, rebirthing, fucking energizing breath work, shamanistic breath work, rah, 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 rah. Cool. Beautiful. There's just principles. That's it. Principles. So the principle of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. If you know the branches and you know what activates what, you can play with the body and impact the body however you want. Mm-hmm. So in terms of breath work, when most people think of, like when you say to people, have you done breath work? And they're like, yep. What kind? And like, oh, I've done some pranayama, like box breathing through yoga. That's what we'd call like mindfulness of breath. Breath work, say a lot of people then have done the next step is kind of like Wim Hof. You do the 30 conscious connected mouth breaths, have a retention, do that 3 or 4 rounds, your breath holds get longer. What's happening there is you're creating a hyperoxygenated state in the body. So you're changing the blood pH, which then as a result kind of shifts the carbon dioxide oxygen balance in the body. And so you can hold your breath for longer because your body's more calm and relaxed and you've got a greater oxygen store. But people also usually in that feel like, oh, I got like this tingling feeling in my body.
That's what I felt. Yeah.
And so tingling can be, typically for people, that just means that they're becoming more aware of their subtle body, less the gross body. Like if I kick your foot or you kick your toe, you feel your toe hit an object. You're not feeling the vibrations in your body. But when you go through, say, that kind of experience, just like deep meditation, you're aware of these subtle energies. You're aware of these tingling and vibration all through your body. That's present in every single moment. If we sat now and slowed down our breath for a minute and we really tuned in, and you may close your eyes or not, you'll feel it. Typically, you can feel it first in your hands, like you can feel it right now. That's there in every moment. We're just not connected to it because we're too up here and not in our body. So it slows us down to a point where we can actually feel in the body, connect to the body. And then with more conscious connected breath work or holotropic breath work or rebirthing, those more people will see like the emotional release style breath works. With those, what we do is as we continue to breathe in that conscious connected way without the pauses, say like in Wim Hof, the retention, that breath hold kind of brings our body back to base. Then we go up again and we come down a little bit. And so Wim Hof is cool because people don't go too much into deep experiences because it kind of brings them back each time with the breath holds. But when you just keep breathing and keep breathing and keep breathing, what eventually happens is you get to a point where the blood flow to the top part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe, starts to slow down, which is the thinking part of our brain. And we have this, it's called transient hypofrontality, which basically is just like the thinking part of our brain shuts down for a little while. And so the unconscious part of our brain can start to, it's like the door opens up for the unconscious. So the beauty of breath work in that, for my perspective and my projection, is that it is what is in our body and in our subconscious that keeps us stuck. Whether that's mental blockages, limiting beliefs, stories, patterns, traumas, emotions, it's all in the subconscious. It's all in the body and held in the deeper layers. And what breath does is basically removes that inhibitor and that door that keeps all of that stuck underneath and held down and goes, hey, come up if you want. And that's when people are like, holy shit, like I was having these memories from when I was a kid of like when I was playing, it was incredible. Or I fucking, had this emotional release where this sadness came up or this joy came through or whatever it was. Basically all it does is opens up these parts of our body that want to be expressed.
Because I did this with Travis.
Yeah.
And I've always, as a kid, struggled to relax.
Yep.
Really struggled to relax. I could sit and watch a movie and not retain anything in the movie and just my brain's constantly, and I'm like, why am I worrying? What am I worrying about? I feel like I'm worrying about something, and then I'm thinking about, Elliott, what are you worried about? And I'm like, oh, fuck, nothing. Just relax and watch the movie. Like, I've always been like that. And I did a breath work with Travis, and it was like nothing so much came up, but it just quieted everything. Yeah. And it felt like I was floating. And he was like, I've never experienced anything like before where my whole head just went light. And it was. And I felt like I was floating off the chair. And I was just like, holy shit. Yeah. Like I've never experienced anything like that before where it just quieted all the noise. Yeah. And I wasn't like thinking about one thing. I was literally like, on a cloud.
Yeah.
I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah. And the reason for that is it slows the brain waves.
Okay.
So we're typically in like an alpha brainwave, so kind of faster. As we do more breath, just like people that go into deep states of meditation, brainwaves slow. Brainwaves are literally just an expression of how many thoughts you have going on. Lots of thoughts, faster brainwaves. Less thoughts, slower brainwaves. And so I recommended breath work to people that have tried meditation, like, I just can't do it. And I know it's a practice. It's not a fucking perfect. That's what it is, meditative practice. You suck at the start, you get better. But for those people that want to have that like quick hit and a shift to experience something different, breath work. Because all you need to do is breathe actively in a connected way for 30 to 50 breaths and then let it out and sit, and you'll notice there's stillness for 30 seconds to a minute. You know, and people are like, whoa, like you just said. And so that's when we create that stillness, that presence, that being, that's when those parts that we were talking about before the cloves of garlic that are usually chatting to each other, they're chilled because they're like, oh, we don't need to be involved here. And that sense of stillness and being, that's actually what's underneath. That sense of like, oh, bliss. Like when we're laying there in that moment and the tingling is just rushing through the body, that's actually there every moment of every day. We're just not tuned into it because we're so much in our head with the noise working. And so breath in that essence is great for calming, for quieting the mind, for relaxing. I used it for the emotional expression because it enabled me to get out of the parts of myself that had shamed myself for anger and let it through.
During your healing process, that's how you used it. Yeah. So when did you get into the identity? When did that come in?
Yeah. So through that process in 2020, start of May, Dad got an RV and drove me down to Victoria so I could be in the care of the family because it was going to be like 8 months of healing. Mitchie had said, like, look, give it a couple of years. This is going to be a long process. Like you were knocking on death's door because I was like, oh, by the end of this year, I'll be 100%. He's like, whoa,
steady down.
And that was hard to hear. But one of the best things he told me was like, if it took 3 years, could you accept that? I was like, okay, and let me focus more on the process and less on the outcome.
Be patient. Yeah.
And identity really came to me because it started when Mitch and I were talking about identification with the label. I have ulcerative colitis, or I have autism, or I have ADHD, or I'm
an anxious person.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm a chippy, identification with anything. When we identify with it, it is our sense of self. We will do everything we can to protect that. So this is one of the first things that you work when someone wants to heal their physical body is, can you let go of that label? And people are like, yeah, fucking oath. But what the case is for most people is that they have what we call a hidden reward for it. I didn't realize this. And when Mitch said to me, because we were talking about the label, and he said, can you let it go? And I was like, obviously, I'd love to let it go. He's like, well, okay. What are you getting from it? And I was offended. I was like, you fucking think I'm getting something from this? Like, I'm in the care of my parents. I've lost my fucking business, my career, my friends. How am I getting anything from this? And he's like, look, you can either defend yourself or you can be open to it. And when I opened to it, I realized that what I was getting was a sense of unconditional love for who I was, not what I'd done. It's like, I can be sick. I don't need to do anything, achieve anything, go anywhere in a career, and they still love me.
Oh, so prior to that, you thought you had to be something to be loved.
Yep.
Oh, right.
And that's where I say about the mindset was so strong, but underneath it was a little boy that just wanted to be loved. And that's what I say about people. I love people that are driven. But if I see it and I don't see the mindfulness, then I will challenge them. And that's because I don't want them to end up where I did.
This feels like a bit of a therapy session for me, but
go for
fuck it.
Yeah, it's your space.
My experiences with identity, I've done a lot of stuff with rugby teams where before a season, we'll sit down as a team and we'll get on the whiteboard and all of us will say, all right, who we are as a team for this season. How do we want to play the game? Who do we play for? Our morals, like all that stuff. We'll put down as a list, and that's who we are as a team. Everyone buys in. We have a great chance to be successful. I've done heaps of that. I follow the All Blacks, and I'm a big consumer of what they do to be successful. When things aren't going good, they can always lean back onto their identity as a team, as a nation, gets them through the hard times. Despite that, I've never, ever thought about applying that to an individual before.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I've been around systems where we do identity as a team.
Yeah.
And there's a question that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
All right. And if someone were to ask me this, I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't know where to begin. That's why it scares me.
Yeah.
If someone were to say, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Scares the shit out of me.
You're not alone.
And I think it's partly because I used to wear masks a lot growing up. Try to be a different person in different situations to different people to try to be liked or to try to fit in, try to be cool, try to be accepted.
Yeah.
So I think I just lost track of who I actually am because I was putting on different masks in different situations.
Yeah.
And I would always keep people at an arm's length.
Yeah.
I would never let anyone get close to me to, I guess, know the real me.
Yeah.
So I think I was fear of rejection or fear they won't like the real me.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say.
Okay. Thank you. First of all.
Don't ask me who I am.
No, I will not.
Please.
Hey, Sophie.
But it's something that I've thought about so much. I was like, fuck, if Travis, if Toddy ever said to me like, all right, El, we're doing a little session. Who are you? I'd be like, fuck, like, I'm Elliott. No, well, Elliott's just a made up name.
Yeah.
I'm a human male adult.
Yeah.
Well, that's just biology. Like, but who are you at a core? And I'm like, fuck, like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Do you want to go into it all a little bit? So, and I won't speak to you, so that way it's like a space of distance where you can kind of jump onto things where you want to. Yeah. So the thing for me was that the realization of the identity with I'm a person with ulcerative colitis. Then there was the realization of the reward that I was getting from it, and through that process of then stepping back and going, okay. There was also then an identity of I'm healing, I'm doing the work to heal, because I wasn't healthy. But then same thing, Mitch was like, cool, you're healing. If you're always healing, are you ever going to be healed? It's like, fuck. Okay. So then there was a shift of I'm not doing this to heal. I am doing this to optimize my health. Even if I'm not at peak health, the focus is no longer on healing, and it's the same now today. I just focus on my sleep, my nutrition, my X, Y, Z, all of my things for optimal health. There's no healing. And that for me was a massive shift because then I wasn't looking at where I was lacking. I was looking at where I was going for positivity. And through that point in time, when I started to pull away things and shift my perspective, kind of like my paradigm for what the future would hold, I was realizing that I've done work on my actions. I've done work on my behaviors. I've done work on my beliefs at personal development seminars and courses and programs. And same thing with values. This is where psychologists and therapists and NLP coaches and life coaches and all of that work, they work with values, beliefs, behaviors, and actions. And I was looking at my life going, the whole fucking thing is on its head. And I haven't consciously changed my values, beliefs, behaviors, or actions. So then it was like going back to Mitch and being like, hey, if your gut reverts, is it the root cause? And I was like, no. I'm going, if my whole life is flipped and I haven't changed my values, beliefs, behaviors, or actions, is it the cause? No. And it was through that time the revelation came of this is all about identity. And I hadn't ever learnt from anyone about identity. There was just this, it wasn't even to me at identity at that point. I didn't have the word. It was just who I am. Who I am has flipped completely and utterly. I don't have my career. I don't have my friend circles. I don't have the things that made me Todd Jarratt. I've got a property that I'm renting on the Sunshine Coast and I'm in the care of my family. That was like it. And so for me, the next steps were, well, if I've got a blank canvas and I've got a second chance at life, how do I ensure that I don't fuck up again? How do I ensure that I get to live the life that I truly want to live from what I know, from what I've experienced and felt over the last 6 to 12 months? How do I live in alignment with that? And I didn't know any of this about identity at the time. I literally just went into how do I start creating like systems? Because for me, I'm like, if I have a system to follow, I'll just tick the boxes because I'm a box ticker. And so I started to create these like little tools, like, oh, here's one that'll help me with my tracking my habits. Here's one that's like enabling me to justify why I am the way I am. I called them identity questions. Like, Why am I fit, strong, healthy, jacked and tanned? You know, like those kind of questions. But then what would happen is by asking the why am I'm not just stating it as like an affirmation. I am fit, strong, healthy, jacked and tanned, whatever it was. I then need to justify why. Why am I? Because I look after my sleep. I manage my stress. I do my breath work. I do my meditation. I go to the gym. I do great with my supplements and my diet. X, Y, and Z. I manage my sleep well. All of those things. So that then what happens is I'm giving my brain and my neural pathways a reason to believe that this is who I am. And every time I do that thing, I'm further validating and solidifying that this is who I am. Because our identity determines our beliefs, our values, our behaviors, and our actions. Who I am, easiest way for people listening to this to really get it, if I go, okay, think of a concreter and think of a politician. They're two humans. But tell me, are their values likely different? Are their beliefs likely different? Are their behaviors likely different? Are their actions likely different? No fucking shit. It all comes from who they are. So if you've been a politician and then you start to be a concreter, the things will shift, or vice versa. A personal trainer and a librarian, completely different based on who they are. And the who I am is the most fundamental subconscious aspect of our life. We're not thinking about it. We're not thinking about shifting like we shift a belief, or we're going to change our behavior. We're going to work on this habit or take this action today. You don't think, oh, I'm going to be this person today. You're like, I'm fucking Elliott and I'm Todd. So this is where it's so subliminal. It's so under our awareness that people don't even look at it. They don't give it the credit. And that's where my journey has been a fucking gift, because I was like, this is the most powerful thing in human psychology and no one's working with it.
Still.
Well, that's my mission. Like that's the work for me, is getting this out to people. And I've learned in the last couple of months that, I've just been trying to jam identity down everyone's throat. But if they don't understand why it's so powerful or what the problem is, they won't work with it. So now I'm starting to reframe and go, okay, how am I going to get people to hear this? And so in terms of your question, to come back to that, like, who am I? For me, that can be a very existential question. Like, let's be real, because people are like, oh, am I a spirit? Am I God? Am I a human? Is all of this made up? Like, it can become very overwhelming.
It feels like that.
I don't usually go to that question because that can happen for people.
Okay.
So what I do in that way is go look at what's the essence of who you feel you are. So for me, my identity is I'm a simple country kid nerd that loves having fun and seeing people happy and fulfilled. Because at a true essence, that's me. And so and it happened yesterday, I was at the beach and Ryan, my housemate, he's at home working his ass off and I'm at the beach chilling. And I noticed his sense of guilt. And I was with another friend, Belle, and I was like, oh, I can notice the guilt there. I was like, hold on, who am I? I was like, I'm a country kid nerd that loves having fun and seeing people happy and fulfilled. I'm having fun. I'm being here, and this is happy and fulfillment for me. So I don't need to be feeling that, because that's not who I am. I don't need to be stressed about that. And so identity and purpose come in together a lot too.
That's my next question.
Okay.
You can.
No, you go.
No, that's it. I was gonna ask you. Let's go into how identity ties in with purpose and stuff, because I think that purpose, and I've talked about it with a lot of guests, is like finding that passion, finding the purpose. And it's just like, how do you know? Is it a feeling? Like, how do you know that you're on the right path? And does it tie in with identity? Is that the beginning of finding your purpose?
This excites the fuck out of me, because I think it's like mastery of a craft. The more you realize you know, the less you feel like you know. And so I've been since 2020, all I've been really focusing on is identity, to really become a master in that, so that in 10 years I can be a leader in that globally. Like that's been the thing. And what I've realized was identity was the focus. But if people aren't clear on their purpose and they create an identity over here and it's not connected, there can be a mismatch or misalignment. And so what I've actually started to do is go, okay, let's get clear on purpose first. Identity will come because we then solidify the identity to serve the purpose.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So with purpose, people are like, I don't know my purpose. That's too big for me to think about. I don't fucking know. I've never had that X, Y, and Z. It's literally just a simple, it's called the purpose protocol.
Okay.
So I've created that and I've been fine tuning it, and I only adjusted it again last night because I had 3 incredible women on a call in our breakthrough calls in part of the identity system. And all 3 of them were like, we're not doing what our purpose is. And one was like, I think I'm getting towards it. I said, let me just take you through some questions. I'm going to kind of use you as guinea pigs because I've just updated this protocol. And I think I took them through a list of 10 questions. And by the end of it, I said, now just let me know, do you feel like in your heart of hearts, the depth of your soul, you're like, in 10 years, 15 years time, you would love to be doing that? And they're like, fuck yeah, that's it. That's the thing. And so I explain to people that purpose isn't something you create. It's actually something that's already within you. And it's just understanding what creates a purpose. So without going through the fucking questions, because I won't remember them off the top of my head, but it's like, what is something that you've been through in the past that you don't want others to have to go through? What is a time in your life where you've wanted help, support, or guidance that you didn't get it, that you'd love to give to someone now? Where were you 5 or 10 years ago that there's a version of you that you would like to help? What is it that you're truly passionate about? What do you deeply care about? What's the thing that you get defensive about, that you're emotive about? Who are the people that you're most wanting to help? And what have those people been through? Where are they now? What is their challenge? And where do they want to get to? Who are those people? And if you sit down with a pen and paper and you write those questions or the answers to those questions, that's a few of them. Like I said, I can't remember the actual protocol in order. But what happens is I've created it. I love systems. I've created it in a way where it kind of pulls away layers of emotion without people realizing how deep they're getting to go.
I love that. And
that's where these 3 women, like 2 of them were like, we want to help women that have been through abusive narcissistic relationships to actually reclaim their self-worth and their sense of self. And the other one wanted to work with mental health and people that have really struggled with mental health. Why? Again, because it's what they've been through, that they've experienced, that they've had a lot of pain around, that they're deeply passionate about giving to others so that others don't have to experience that same sense of pain. Why am I the identity mentor? Because I lost my identity when I nearly lost my life. And I don't want anyone else to have to go through that sense of who the fuck am I? And what's my purpose in life? Because that's really what happened to me in 2020 was I'd been the exercise science training the athletes guy. And I was like, I'm not going back to that. It was like a line in the sand of like, that's not what fulfills me. And so I created the identity system from going through and asking myself questions and creating tools to be like, what is it that fulfills me? And I realized like my passion had been there for those years prior. I hadn't listened to it. It was helping people with their mind.
Man, that makes it really clear for me, those questions. Because I was just thinking about it. Yeah, absolutely. Because I started this because I want to encourage people to have difficult and vulnerable conversations.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone else to feel like they can't talk to a loved one or a friend or even a complete stranger and go down a path of no return.
Yeah.
I want to encourage people, and I'm not preaching that it's easy.
No.
It's hard, and it's always going to be hard. It's never going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And I think just reflecting on those questions is that I'm trying to help whoever it is that's like listening to this, if they listen to an episode and, you know, it encourages them to have a conversation with their mum or their dad about something that's happened. Yeah. You know, that's what I'm trying to do, because it's so easy and it's so often just to, I'll do it tomorrow, you know, and then 10 years go by.
Yeah.
Or I'll do it tomorrow and then you may never have that opportunity to speak with a loved one because time goes quick. You're not promised, you know, tomorrow's not guaranteed. Yeah. And just reflecting on that that's the reason. Like I love having, as weird as this sounds, I love having difficult conversations.
Yeah.
I don't mind if you want to prod or outside the podcast, if people want to pull me aside and go, this is what's happened, I'll go, that's fucking heavy, but thank you for how do you feel after like talking about it? And our sort of motto and what I preach is that conversations change mindsets.
Yeah.
And they really do.
Yeah.
I've seen so much change in this, even in my friends and in my family. As soon as they tell me something, like the episode I did with my dad, where we both shared things that we've never spoken about to each other or anyone else before. The next day we were completely different. And I was like, holy shit, the power of just letting it all out and be truthful and honest and vulnerable change our relationship forever. And I'm glad that, like, I've got my cousin, my dad's brother, who suffered, really bad in that family household back in New Zealand. He's my dad's brother, my cousin's dad. He passed away from cancer, and he watched our episode and he was like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you guys had the chance to talk about those things and heal and heal those wounds." But he's like, I regret that I never got the opportunity to do it with my dad. And he's like, I feel like there's this parts of that life and parts of that history that I'll never get that chance to do again. And he messaged my dad. He was just like, do you want to have that chat with me?
Oh.
So I don't know if I have it yet, but I went on a bit of a tangent there.
Beautiful.
But yeah, that's where I'm at with why I want to do this.
Yeah. For those that want to have those conversations too, like, you can see the impact that that's had on those closest to you. That, there's, as you've said, it's not necessarily easy, but it's worth it. And two things with that is, like, our family is transformed because of what I went through and the conversations that's created, the depth of connection. And, I guess for them, the acknowledgement that, he may not have been here. So it's kind of, it's the challenges that bring us that awareness. But also for people that are like, I have lost someone that I wanted to have that conversation with. There is processes that we do that can give you I'm not going to say the exact same experience, but the same internal completion in your nervous system and in that emotion without needing that person.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
And you've done it before?
Yep. Yeah, and I've seen many people do it before. Yeah. Because it's not actually about the other person hearing it. It's not about them. It's about you expressing it.
So it's not about them receiving it. It's about you expressing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
For them, and I would say most of the time, but it is all the time because it's an internal healing. The other person can't heal you. Only you can. And so, I've seen it in rooms before with people. I've been through that process myself. I've seen people do it in calls, and there is an expression of it feels complete. Like, there's nothing now that needs to be said. Like, they've been able to go through that. And the beauty is having the opportunity to do it with the person. But for those that feel like, I've missed out, please know that you haven't, because it's an internal healing. Just like yours, you feel different. You don't know what Dad's feeling, but you feel different. And that's the thing. Yeah.
Well, I've got another bit of therapy to go through with you.
I have one thing I wanted to. I was like, it doesn't really fit where we are.
Yeah, you go.
Through that healing process in 2020, I was born with no sense of smell.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think we spoke about this.
Tell them this. Yeah, tell them this.
And I share this because I'm like, if I've been through, I don't talk about my story unless I'm typically on a podcast where it's going to give value to people. But for me, the biggest piece of value I can give is to those that are hearing that. It's like, it is fucking possible to heal your body beyond what you've been told and you realize. At the example, I had no sense of smell from 0 to 25. Hadn't smelled anything. It was a laughing joke, like the joke of our family. I couldn't smell. My friends would fart in the car and I wouldn't know. Like, they'd wait for me to look and have that laugh, and then I wouldn't notice anything. That kind of experience. And when I was going through what I was with my physical health, and I was like, if I've been at death's door and I can heal against the medical system's beliefs with Mitchie's guidance through this, and I can be coming out the other side, I'm going to fucking get myself a sense of smell. And so there's a book called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Segal, and it's literally like, it goes through the different organs in the body, the different emotions, and this is a lot of where I've learned about, this emotion blocks this condition is caused by this emotion or this organ. And I literally went to the nose and I just did the the meditative practices, the color processes with some breath work and a couple of like steam bath thingies, just open up.
Clear. Yeah.
Yep. Within 2 weeks. I think we've spoken about this. It was within 2 weeks that I started that process that I was on the toilet, because I was on the toilet a lot still at that point in like July, August 2020. And I was in the morning and I was sitting beside one of those little footstools. So I had like my knees near my chest, so it opens up the intestine.
Best way to go to the toilet for everyone listening. Yep.
It opens up the base of the intestine. And so I got my hands like wrapped around each other, kind of my head between my knees. And I must have inhaled through my nose, nose breathing as I shouldn't. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And then I realized I'm smelling and I start to yell. I'm like, Mom! And you got to imagine, like, she's been through fucking 6 months of trauma thinking her son's going to die. Yeah. And now I'm on the toilet because I've been shitting blood and I'm screaming. She's like, no. Fuck, what's wrong? Yeah. And she comes running and she opens the door. Like, there was really, at that point in time, was like, they'd seen me go through so much stuff. Like, seeing me on the toilet wasn't an issue. What's wrong? I'm like, I can smell my shit. And she's like, what? Like this surprise. I'm like, I can smell. And she'd known that I'd been working on getting a sense of smell. And she's like, surprised, wow. And that kind of went on each morning. I'd wake up, I'd smell my shit. Cool. That was all I could smell for a couple of weeks. Then I was reading my nieces and my nephews a bedtime story a couple of weeks later. And at that point in time, I still couldn't determine if I was going to fart or shit myself. Like, I had no control over my bowel for about 2 years, actually. Yeah. I had massive social anxiety. Even when I was running the breathwork events up here at the beach, like I'd be running to the public toilets when people were in meditation and stuff, because I still was healing, going through that journey of the body healing. And I was reading them a bedtime story and I was like, I'm so here with them right now. I'm not going to the toilet. I was like, if I shit myself, I shit myself. So what? And I farted. Didn't shit myself. Woo! And they thought it was hysterical because I farted. But then it was even funnier that I'm like, I can smell. And, they're 4 and 6 years old, whatever it is, maybe 3 and 5. And the fact that Uncle Toddy's so excited that he can smell his own fart. They're like, what is going on?
Yeah, Toddy's a bit loopy, I think.
Yeah. And so I smelled that, and that was the second thing. So I was able to smell my shit, my farts. And it's like, well, this isn't too great of a start. But then a couple of weeks later went by, and it was like, then I could smell like a roast dinner, then chicken palmy. Then I started to smell like essential oils, and now I have a full sense of smell.
All through breath work?
Look, I don't know if I'd say just breath work. It was the practices I was doing with that book of like, in the secret language of your body, following the meditations, doing those daily with breath work and the intention of that healing. And it was just an intention of the body healing. Whenever I'd go into breath, I'm like, body, whatever you need to do to heal yourself, I am the vessel, let it out. And so all different things.
Remarkable.
Yeah. Like, imagine you've been blind for 25 years, you've never seen, and then through 2 weeks of doing work on vision, you open your eyes and suddenly you see. Like, that's what it was like. I'd never smelt, so I didn't know. I didn't know the difference between a fart and a shit. I didn't know what smelled good or bad. I didn't know the difference between petrol and diesel. Like, I had no discernment. So it's been a journey of the last couple of years of learning to smell. Just like if you open your eyes for the first time, you don't know how to discern red, blue. You're like, they're different, but what?
It's like learning to walk again, isn't it?
Yeah.
So have you experienced a lot of these things with your clients?
I haven't done a lot of the physical healing with my clients.
Okay.
So typically people come to me for identity and purpose, not physical healing.
Okay.
If people come to me for, let's say they've got cancer or they've got colitis or Crohn's or whatever that is, I send them to Mitch. Because he's the guy that guided me. It's not my thing. If someone came to me and they've got gut issues and I'm like, okay, start here, but I probably recommend you go and see someone like Mitch, or I'll point them in the direction that I feel fits. Because although I've been through it, it's not my passion. And if I was to go down that path and try to help others, it wouldn't be in alignment with my purpose.
Correct.
And that's where you have like, you're not fulfilled. I'm passionate about people knowing that they can heal because they fucking can, and the living proof of that. But my mission is something different.
Something that was playing on my mind for the last couple of weeks is I listened to a podcast with Jordan Peterson and David Goggins. Yeah. You remind me actually a little bit like David Goggins actually. And they were talking about discipline.
I'm a bald African-American man in the SEALs. Thank you.
And they were talking about discipline.
Yeah.
And Jordan Peterson said something. It was that people, you've got to be disciplined. You've got to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
if you love to do something, you're not disciplined as much as the person, so let's say, goes to the gym. The person who hates going to the gym but still does it, that's discipline. And I was like, holy shit, I don't do anything I don't want to do.
Gotcha.
Am I not disciplined? And then I was thinking, oh, what the fuck? Am I not disciplined? I don't do anything I don't want to do. Like, everything I do because I want to do it. And then David Goggins replied to him and said, I think I've tricked my brain into falling in love with the rituals and practices that, let's just say, I used to hate.
Yeah.
So he's like, I fucking love getting up at 4 a.m. and doing 30 miles. Like, or I love doing cold showers and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's what I've done. Like, I really enjoy training. I really enjoy eating well. I really enjoy cold plunges and saunas. I really enjoy connecting with family and friends. I really enjoy going out to work for the mines for the week, even though that's a weird thing to say, but I know the outcome is me providing for the family.
Yep.
It's setting myself up.
Yep.
And I'm like, have I turned the things that I say would hate or don't enjoy, have I just looked at it a different way now? I would love to know, what are some things that you need to do in your life to be the best version of yourself?
As in to look after me, to show up at my best?
Yes.
Yep. Space to be with myself. Silence to feel my body.
Okay.
I'm a very sensitive person now. Even 7 months ago, I had some big challenges come up, like repressed trauma from childhood that I had no conscious awareness of. That's probably rocked me the deepest I've ever been rocked, like even deeper than what I went through physically.
Really?
Because I felt very ungrounded. I was out of my body for a couple of months. Like when you feel like you can't tell if it's been 2 minutes or 2 hours?
Yeah.
That was a lot of the time for a few months of not feeling like I was here, very scared, felt like I was out of control a lot because there was the parts from childhood that were coming up for the first time in my life because they felt safe enough to do so. And it's been a journey. Like, I've been seeing somatic experiencing therapists, internal family systems therapists, psychologists, like support to process these, because I was like, this isn't something I'm going to fuck with. These are pretty intense things. And so I feel like even before those 6 months, I could be very present with people. And this is after we met. So there's been a lot that's happened in between. And I could be very with people, but I didn't get mental health. I didn't get anxiety. I didn't get panic attacks. I didn't get depression. I didn't get
as in...
I didn't understand it.
You didn't understand it, yeah.
I never felt... Even when I was sick, I was like, I'm a warrior. I will positive mindset my way through this, right? Like, the drivenness was, as we've spoken about, it's been so pertinent through my life that I'd never really felt the negativity of life.
Oh, really?
I was just such a positive person. Like, yeah, there were anger and I'd be pissed off, but it was like, in essence, I didn't see negativity of the world. I was like, I was always the rosy glasses. And sometime through last year, in the middle of last year, I had an experience where it was like my heart opened to something I hadn't experienced before. I felt a level of love I hadn't felt before. It was beautiful. And then what came on the other side of that was like, the understanding I have now is it's like it kind of opened up a box, that there was love in there, but there was also a lot of scary things, challenges. And this is the first time I've spoken about this in this way. So it's like a vulnerable thing too.
And it's interesting when you do open up. It's like that can of worms. You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
What's going to come up here?
And it took like, I was with my family. I was with friends. I'd slowed down on work. I was doing everything I could to just be in nature, to ground in, to support myself, to get through that time. And it was really challenging. And for all the work that I'd done for this to come up this way, it was like, wow, it's teaching me in terms of the trauma space. I hadn't been in that space. I hadn't stepped foot in it because I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. Things have been awesome. And so someone could be talking to me, and I'd helped plenty of people with challenges. They'd been through trauma, mental health, but I was like, go and do your breath work, do your ice baths, do your affirmations, do your gratitude. You'll be good. Let's go. I didn't get it. I couldn't actually be with them and go, oh, fuck. Like, you've had a panic attack.
Like,
holy
relate
shit.
to that. Yeah.
I didn't get the empathy part of it. And that's what this last 6 months has brought me, is like, I fucking get it, having lived it. And it's been challenging. And so to answer that question in the realest form that it is, it's actually, having a fuckload of time to be with myself, to check in. Because when when you feel more, the container is bigger. You kind of I have higher highs. I feel more joy. But then on the other side, there's more of the pain. You feel more. And it's a beauty and it's a challenge. It's an opportunity and it's a responsibility.
Yeah.
And so having that time to check in and like, okay, how's my heart? How's my nervous system? Where have I got tension, or where is it a part showing up, protecting or defending, or where's fear, or where's sadness, or where's heaviness? Like, is that present right now? And then, okay, if that's there, I've been really committed to feeling it and to processing it, to metabolize it, because I know that just like my physical health, that was around anger. I feel like fear and sadness is like another experience of me heightening my human journey to clear that.
Love that. You ready for a quick fire? As quick as you are feeling comfortable with. Oh, sorry. Quick fire questions.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be too quick.
Yeah.
Because I would like a nice decent answer here, but
a decent answer. Oh no, there's pressure on.
Because I did quick fire with Travis, and he was like boom, boom, boom. I was like, oh shit. What has been a lesson you wished you learned earlier in life?
That it's not always going to be light and easy. That those rose-colored glasses were serving but protecting from something, more challenging. And being able to accept the continuum of emotions and feelings. Yeah, that was I was speaking to Mum about the other day, and to Emanuela, the somatic experiencing therapist. Like I said, everything had been so positive before that I was like, there was something fundamentally broken within me when I wasn't feeling constant happiness and joy and positivity. And now it's like, oh no, that's the other side. Okay. Yeah.
I heard a really good quote the other day that really hit home to me.
Yeah.
And it was, people make the mistake in life that they think love is finding the right person, when love is actually becoming the right person. You want to become a person that you want to spend the rest of your life with. And it hit home because I never had a good relationship with myself. I wasn't my own best friend. I was my own worst enemy for a long time. And it was even around the time when I started the podcast was a lot of healing and learning to love myself. Yeah. What is the relationship like with yourself now?
It's real. It's fun. It's playful, but it's real. Like when there's things to feel, I'll feel it. And I have a saying now: when it's real, feel, and enjoy positivity in between. So I would say I'm the most myself I've ever been, but in that I'm finding deeper parts of myself that I haven't known before, which is the frame of it is I choose for it to be fucking exciting because it enables me to hold and to help at a greater depth than I ever have before.
I think you've already answered this next question a little bit, but I'll ask it anyway. How do I best let go of emotional pain, resentment, or any other blockages that could be holding me back in life?
Come into the body. The reason that is the answer is because the more that I have learnt about healing, overcoming trauma and challenges, it's all in the body. The answer's in the body. And when we get caught in the story or in all the thoughts, we're not actually being in the body where that block is. And so when we're in the thought and in the story, we kind of go on this tangent and we're not here. So the way to heal it is to feel the sensations in the body and be with the sensation. Oh, I have tightness in my chest. Okay. I'm going to observe that. I'm going to breathe into it, breathe through it, and just notice if there's any feelings to it. Is there like a shape? Is there a color? Is there a weight to it? Okay, I'm going to be with that. I'm going to keep breathing with it and being with it, not in it, not letting it take over, being with it, which is a big discernment because I was fucking in all my stuff. That as you continue to be with it, you can continue to breathe with it. Sometimes emotion comes through, and as you're with that emotion, you're letting it out. It's like, the way I explain it is, all of these things that are in the body is like liquid in a bottle. And each time you allow yourself to be with it and hold it, you let a little bit more out, and that's the healing.
I love that. Tips for anyone that may feel lost and just try to help them get put on the right path.
If they feel lost to me is the sense of direction and purpose.
Yes.
So I would go back to those questions I said before and actually write those down. If you want to send me a message on socials, you can, and the actual list, we can go through those. But in essence, it's finding out what your heart wants to do. Because when we feel lost, typically a feeling of lost, when you talk to people that are experiencing that, they're going in a direction, they're working a job, they're doing a thing, but there's something else that feels lost. And it's actually that what it is it's going, we want to be going right, and you're going left. So it's actually, left, right. That's the lost. I'm not sure is lost. When you're able to actually listen to the body and go, this is what it is. And so those questions, what I just got you to do then in terms of feel into the body, sensations, do that, then answer the questions, because the answers are in the body, not in the head. And when they do that, those answers will come through. And the second thing I'll add with that, in terms of if people are feeling lost going through that process, it's like, once you're clear on it, like, cool, okay, be really specific with what it is you'd love to do, and then let it go. I'm going to keep on my path. I know that that's where I will be going, and then it will in time come up, because it's like your soul's path. If you've become aware of what your soul's path is, you will align with it. And if it means that you're like, hey, I want to speed this up, or I want to connect with it sooner, then that's where you can reach out to a coach or a mentor or whoever it is to go down that path. But to begin with, it's feeling into, those questions, those answers.
Last question. If you could go back to a time in your life, where would you go and why?
Fuck. It's so funny that the first things that come up are to the most challenging times. To
Really?
see it from a different perspective. At first, there was like 2014. That year I said there was like the good old days.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
But I was like, I feel like I'd want to go back to year 5 when I went through that bullying to be and what I mean is, like, I'd be going there with my adult perspective.
Yes. Okay.
To then see that process and like be there to support my little boy that went through so much, where he felt he was alone and alienated, and like, hey, you're not alone. I'm here with you. It's kind of like reparenting. So then, and then probably when I was unwell in 2020, to be with me and be like, hey, you're going to get through this, and your greatest gifts are going to be on the other side of it. So it's like the reason I'd go to those times is to actually reparent.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. So I've got a closing tradition of the podcast where I don't ask the last question. I get questions sent in from loved ones, whether it be family members or friends.
I love that.
So, Travis.
Oh, is this from T-Rav?
This is from T-Rav. So he's obviously a good friend of yours. He's someone that looks up to you a lot. He credits you for a lot of his success and how he's developed as a man. What's the most What's the most embarrassing / funny story that has happened to you in the last few years?
When did he ask you this?
The other day.
Yeah, he already knows the answer.
And he goes, ha, ha, ha.
He knows the answer. Oh, man. When we were at dinner a couple of months ago with like the brotherhood, and we went through this process. And I told a couple of stories, and one of them the boys were on for quite a while. So in 2021, I'd started Cool to Be Conscious. Actually, no. This was the weekend that I went down and experienced Cool to Be Conscious. So the weekend before I started the stuff up here. At this point in time, I still didn't really have control over my bowel.
Here we go.
Yep. So when I needed to go to the toilet, I had about 30 seconds. So I was on like hypervigilance, red alert of like, where are the fucking public toilets, where are the bushes, all of that.
You need an exit plan.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Need to know where to go. I need to know quick. And so it was a lot of stress. And we'd been down from Goldie to Crystal Castle. Then we'd been to like some other place down near Byron.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with my housemate now, Rye, Beck, and Bren. So 3 friends. And we were driving back through Goldie. And we're in like a residential area. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was in the passenger seat. And I've gone to I notice now, like, this is more vulnerable than I realised to share it on a podcast because I've like shared it with mates, but okay. So we're driving through the Goldie and I've gone to Bren like, I've got to go. And she's like, okay, in a minute. And I was like, no, you don't get it. I've got to really go. And she's like, there's no toilets around here. And I was like, it's either you pull up and I find somewhere or I shit in your chair, like in the seat of the car. And she was like, oh shit. And I was like, okay, pull up. And she stopped and there was just houses. That's all there was. And there was a house right like near where we'd parked, and there was the house, and down the side of it was like a driveway, but it was just all grass. And I literally ran in full view of the car on the road, and I just dropped my dacks and I just shat on their lawn.
Like a dog.
Yeah, literally just like squatted on the lawn, I was just shitting on their lawn, looking up like hopefully they don't fucking come outside and see this random guy shitting on their lawn. Because at this point in time, they're like, I'd shit myself so many times I couldn't count.
Yeah.
So but for someone else, they'd be like, what is this freak doing? Like, this is disgusting. And so, like, I shit on their lawn. I think I, like, grabbed some lawn and, like, wiped myself. And then, like, I ended up getting back in the car and I was crying because there was a lot of embarrassment and shame getting back into the car in front of my friends and I couldn't control myself. So there was a lot of, like, heaviness on the other side. But when I reflect back on it now and I can still sort of see it, of like me running and what it would have looked like from the car of just seeing me running and just shitting on some random's lawn, wiping my ass and then walking back and driving off.
Yeah, horrid.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
To those people.
Yeah, thanks for sharing
thanks
that.
for your lawn.
Yeah, I do just want to say that I really appreciate you coming on today. I love the work that you're doing. I think you're ahead of your time, to be honest with you.
Oh shit.
Yeah. No, I honestly like the things that you're implementing now, for years, it's people are slowly starting to catch on.
Yeah.
And I think that you saw the vision years ago. So I just want to say thank you for leading the way in that space. For anyone listening and watching, if any of this resonated with you, get in contact with Toddy here, the Identity System, doing amazing things, and yeah, very proud of you, mate.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the time and the space and your vulnerability and realness too.
Thanks.
And for living your purpose in sharing this so other people have the conversations.
Thank you. Appreciate that.